Come on, you can hum along at home.
I think we're all live. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And a wonderful welcome to you all on this beautiful, I have to look at what date it is. I don't know what date it is anymore. A wonderful Monday evening. And
are we on Facebook as well, Daniel?
Yeah, if you want to just share it from to your shul or to your page.
Yeah, I'll do it. That's okay. You keep going.
So good evening, everybody. And as we said, welcome. Of course, we are definitely both, myself and Shmuel are certainly feeling for everybody in Melbourne and of course in New South Wales as well for the news today of another extension of our lockdown. I know it's not easy for any of us. So I know that in my congregation, and I know for sure in yours as well, Shmuel, we're here for you guys.
Absolutely.
This is actually part one of our series on making it a meaningful high holidays next Monday night on Zoom. It's interesting because before, when we were planning this, Shmuel and I, we were talking about let's do this in person. It's going to be much better. People are tired of Zooms already. And then we said, just do it on Zoom in case. Maybe we shouldn't have said in case. But anyway, here we are. We're on Zoom. And we hope that the next 45 minutes to an hour or so will be meaningful, will be something to, I guess, distract us from all that's going on around us. And as always, please feel free to ask any questions or comments in the chat. We definitely don't mute you because we don't want to hear you. It's just because, as we all know, in Zoom, it's very difficult to concentrate when you've got all the different background noise, but that's our best way to include you, is if you wanted to chat to us in the chat box. And more than that, I think, feel free to just enjoy, sing, Shmuel is starting to sing. We're not going to sing necessarily, but follow along. As I said, if you have any thoughts or comments, please do share with us. Shmuel, how's your day been?
Oh, it's been rough and tumble, as you would know.
Yes,
it's been full on. But tonight is a new night, and tomorrow is a new day, and please God, it will be way more positive than it was today.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just mentioning it briefly. Both myself and Shmuel also serve on the executive of the Rabbinical Council of Victoria, and of course, you can imagine the involvement that we both had in the massive, I guess, community crisis, if you like, that's been going on over the last 24 hours or 48 hours. And I think the message I just want to share with all of you, and Shmuel, of course, add anything you wish to add to this, but two things. Number one is, of course, we've got to just stick in there. As tough as it is, we've got to keep the rules. We've got to do what we can to encourage those around us to follow the rules. I know it's tiring. I know we have fatigue. I don't think any of us are immune to that. But at the same time, it's not just about you. It's about how you care for others and how you realize the impact of your actions. And perhaps it's a big theme of Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
It's that how your actions do impact and affect those around you. So at the same time, I think we've got to remain humane. It's been shocking personally to see such disgusting vitriolic comments that people are making against the family that they don't even know, and perhaps against the Jewish community. So I think whilst people do the wrong thing and they need to face, the music, they need to face whatever punishment or fine, whatever is coming to them, at the same time, don't lose your own dignity. Don't become a horrible person just because someone else has done something wrong. Sure, you can be frustrated. Sure, you can vent and you can be upset, but keep it dignified. I think that's really all I would like to say on that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also reminds, not to dwell on it, but it also reminds us of the power of community. Yeah. We are a very, very diverse community, and it just reminds us, perhaps not in a very positive way, but it can lead us to a very positive state, is the power of community. Be there for each other, and let us heal together as we get closer to Rosh Hashanah.
I think you're right. I think that's an excellent point. I think we also got to heal. We've got to realize that our power is in our unity, and of course, not excusing anyone's actions, not
100%.
condoning them in any way, but at the same time, our strength is in our unity. It's sticking together, it's being there for each other, and that will get us a lot further than the opposite way.
Yeah.
So tonight's chat is, of course, on the first part of the high holidays, namely Rosh Hashanah, and
3 weeks away.
And maybe there'll be there's a Purim miracle, there's the Hanukkah miracle, maybe there'll be a Rosh Hashanah miracle where we will actually be in shul, because according to Dan Andrews, the lockdown will end on the Thursday before Rosh Hashanah. So
yeah,
you never know. It might be very limited, which I'm assuming it will be in terms of numbers. But if we can be there, we can be together at least in a limited fashion. Bezrat Hashem, that will be the best case, in the best case scenario in a series of unfortunate realities that we all face. But next week we'll talk about Yom Kippur.
We don't want to set ourselves up for for any upset. So I think at the back of our mind, we need to be quite realistic and be prepared for what may just occur.
Exactly. Good point. Let's, as they say, hope for the best. Was it prepare for the worst, hope for the best,
Yeah.
I think it's along those lines. So look, we've got a lot to cover in a short time. So this week we'll speak about Rosh Hashanah. Next week we're going to obviously speak about Yom Kippur, and possibly we'll see what the current flow of the reality is. Maybe we'll do something for Sukkot later on. We'll see how that eventuates.
Absolutely.
But for now, we're not going to have necessarily a structure going through the Machzor or going through a particular order. We just want to share different ideas, thoughts that perhaps can make it a little bit more meaningful for you yourselves at home. Please God, for those who perhaps are going to watch this, not necessarily live, but later on. But for anyone sort of tuning in, I guess some reflections that both of us can share. So I don't know if you want to kick off, Shmuel. You want me to kick off?
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's put this in perspective. I mean, it's very easy to get carried away with, there's so much going on around us. And I think we do need to take a moment to pause and remind ourselves that Rosh Hashanah is 3 weeks away. And we don't, like any big milestone or any big occasion, we don't wait till it's upon us, but we actually look forward to it and we prepare for it. And if that's the case for any milestone, most definitely for Rosh Hashanah, it's the highlight. It's the highlight of our year. So to put it into perspective, perhaps to kick off the conversation, Judaism believes that the way our calendar is set up is it's not in a linear formation. We don't go from point A to point B. And this has been discussed many times, but it's important to remember, especially as we come into Rosh Hashanah. We always talk about the fact how the year is the circle of life, or the cycle of the year. And we don't just go around in circles like a roundabout, but like that round challah, which perhaps we can touch on a bit later. It's that each year we revisit the energy of the year before and the years past. And it's a very powerful thing. It's not just, here's Rosh Hashanah, or here's Pesach, or here's Sukkot. We actually take the energy from the day and we harness it and we use it to make it very relevant to that particular year. So for example, Pesach, we talk about, we focus very much on the idea of freedom, of what it means to be free. And we harness that energy of our ancestors and the Exodus and so on. And Hanukkah, we very much harness the energy of light and positivity and even growth. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and this entire month, I think it's all about the energy of rebirth, of renewal, of things that are new, even forgiveness, that ability to, as a human being, to be able to start over. It's the beginning, it's the head. So it's not just here Rosh Hashanah, it's about recognizing that there's an energy that we can tap into, one that we visited last year, but one that we can take upon ourselves again, how we can incorporate into our lives the concepts and the ideas that we're going to talk about tonight and make them just relevant, make them real. So it's about forgiveness. It's about, that's more Yom Kippur, but the whole idea is, renewal and rebirth and joy and love and so on. So I think that's, by way of introduction, is that let's harness the energy. Let's really tap into it and kind of block out everything else that's trying to pull us aside, not just now, but as we lead into Rosh Hashanah, and get into the spirit of things. You can take it from there, Rabbi.
Beautiful. I love that. I mean, something you said in the beginning, not to take away from this powerful, intro that you've given us, but it seems like such a long time ago, the Olympics. It sort of carried us through the initial stages of this most recent lockdown. I think it lifted the spirits of people seeing the sporting activity. But there's always something that fascinates me in terms of the Olympics and in terms of all the different feats that go on and all different sports that go on. It's the 100-meter sprinters. And you look at it and it's like this person has like everything that they've done, everything that they've trained for, like comes down to literally to 10 seconds. It's like the race starts, the gun goes off, and bang, 10 seconds later, it's over.
Yep.
And you watch this thing and you think, if you're not a sports person and you're watching from the stands, imagine you was totally naive about the sport. And you're like, it's ridiculous. 10 seconds, this is all this guy does. Useless,
Yeah.
But we know that
4 years of training, right?
But I'm saying that's exactly the point. We know that anyone with a bit of intellect understands that it's not about the 10 seconds.
That's
the 10 seconds is just the finale. It's just really everything that came before, the early mornings, the late nights, the diet, the training, the coaches, the physios, the injuries. I mean, so much went into those 10 seconds. And you would be foolish to say, I'm gonna imagine I arrive at the Olympics and say, I'll race against them. What big deal is 10 seconds? Of course, I wouldn't have a clue. I wouldn't have a chance. And so I think a mistake that many of us make in terms of our high holidays, that we forget that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is almost like the race. It's the 10-second race that you've got. And if you expect it all to happen just at that moment, and yeah, sure, you can have inspiration, and please God, when we're in shul, you'll hear great sermons from a guy like Rabbi Shmuel Karnofsky, which will inspire you and uplift you. But ultimately, you've got to recognize that it's the preparation throughout the year. It's like you're training for that moment. If you want that moment to really be successful, if you want to win the 10-second race, those who put in time and effort, and of course, I'm preaching to the converted, because here you all are training, if you like, listening, and hoping to get to prepare that when the day does come, when the race does come, then we are ready to really take what you said, Shmuel, to take the energy that is there, that the fruits that are ripe for picking, you'll recognize them, you'll see them. Otherwise, you walk in and you don't even see where the fruit is to be taken. So I think, let us not underestimate the power and the value of the lead up. Don't just wait for the final moment. You can change now. You can be inspired now. You can learn now. And I hope that will then make Rosh Hashanah, whether it's at home or in the synagogue, whether it's at shul or in your living room, it will make it something which can really be life-changing for you, your family, for those around you. And so keep growing. And I think that's one of the reasons we blow the shofar every day in Elul except for Shabbat, because we're training, we're getting ready. Thank God we don't have to get fit for 4 years like the athletes.
That's it. You got to train those lungs.
for 1 month, we'll get there.
Yeah, no, it's very true. That's very beautiful. And maybe we can kind of segue into the fact that you're referring to the race. The 100-meter dash, the sprint. It's important to remember that we're not racing against anybody else besides ourselves, right? I think I spoke about this in one of my daily shofar videos the other day. Into the Zoom. Oh, Daniel, you want to be so kind to let my good Rebbitzin in?
It doesn't have it.
One second. Sorry. I've got a letter into my Zoom. Sorry, we've got two functions going on at once. You talk for a little bit. I'll be right back. That's okay. I'll be right back, Daniel.
No worries. So I think what Shmuel was saying, which is a very, very important point, is that you're not racing against others. But if you could look at
your computer,
if you could sort of imagine yourself cloned, and you probably are racing against yourself. You're racing against your old self and saying, how am I going to be a better athlete than I was the year before, in inverted commas? So you don't have to put yourself next to somebody that's not you. It's about, how do I become a better version of myself? I remember one year, it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, when I was still the rabbi in Northeastern in Doncaster. I remember I went to get a new iPhone. I remember seeing the huge line of people lining up to get the new iPhone. There was always... So what happened to Shmuel? It disappeared. There was always lines of people lining up to get the latest iPhone. And I remember, waiting there, and I eventually gave up. I said, I'm not going to sit in line to get a new iPhone. I came back a few days later, but that image struck me, with so many people lining up to get the latest version of that iPhone. I thought, this is a great and profound Rosh Hashanah message, because people are so adamant that they want a better version of their phone, and they cannot sleep until they've got the better version. How about ourselves? Do we line up in inverted commas and say, what version of myself is now ready for 2021. What version of myself are now for 5782 in the Jewish calendar? And I think, we need an upgrade, just like your phone needs an upgrade every single year. I think you've got to look at the things that aren't working, the programs that need to be rethought, the stuff that has to be deleted, the content which is not so good. And that sometimes you do actually need a new device. You need a whole new fresh start. And I think all of us perhaps at this point really feel, it's time for a fresh beginning, to push all this negativity that's been happening in the community, the ongoing coronavirus. And I think in a way we dive into Hashem, that just like we want a fresh start. Please God, the world gets a clean slate and we can move forward. Before Shmuel comes back, I wanted to share a story which I was going to share a bit later, but now that I don't know where our co-host has disappeared, but I heard a really, really cute, beautiful story, which some of you probably can relate to if you have children, and you can imagine some of these scenes. It may have happened to you even, but there was a really cute story about a couple that went to a good friend's wedding, and they noticed that it was getting very late, and they had with them their little daughter. And, it got to a point where they said, well, we better take her home. As they were leaving, the little girl said, Mom, you can't go home yet. I haven't had dessert. And the mother said, she looked around and it looked like the dessert had already been cleared. And she's like, look, I'm sorry. Don't worry about it. You don't have to get dessert. Anyway, as a persistent young girl, she doesn't give up, she wants her dessert. So she goes to her father and says, Abba, Tati, Daddy, we're not leaving until I get dessert. And the daddy said, no, look, I'm sorry, little Chanala, we can't get dessert. It's already been cleared and he'll get it home. Anyway, they walk into the car and they turn around and the little girl's disappeared. And of course, they understand she's run back into the hall. So they follow her back into the hall and they're looking for the little girl. And guess who the little girl's talking to? She's run up to the bride. Of all people, she's run up to the color. And the parents are so embarrassed, and they walk up and they hear the little girl saying to the color, and she says, or whatever the bride's name was, they'll call her Sarah, I'm not going home. And the bride says, what's wrong, little Chana? What's the problem? I have not yet had dessert, and I will not leave your simcha until I've had dessert. And the bride, of course, looks around and she sees that dessert is being cleared. But when you are the, hold on, Shmuel, I'll make you a co-host. But when you are the bride, I used to work for a kosher catering company, and when you're the bride, you get to do whatever you want. When I was a student, I was a waiter. Anyway, the bride takes this little girl's hand and she walks right into the kitchen, right up to the caterer and says, get this girl dessert. And of course, the chefs and everybody's scrounging around to find a plate of dessert, and they give the dessert to the little girl. And of course, the parents see this and they reflect on the story, and they reflect on, I guess, the concept is so relevant to Rosh Hashanah. What's the nimshal? How does the parable relate to this story? In life, we often think when it comes to our connection to Hashem that we've got to, what merit do I have? Who am I? So we'll try this person. Maybe we'll play a little bit. Maybe we won't talk directly. Maybe I'll listen to the rabbi a little bit. I'll go to the father, go to the mother. But the little girl, the little innocence, which is inside of all of us, that little, what we call a pinta yid, just a totally tamimah, somebody so pure, so innocent, says, I'm going straight to the source. I need to waste my time. I'm going straight to the bride. And what happens when you go straight to the source? You get your dessert. So I think for each of us, no matter who we are, we all have a connection to Hashem. We're all Hashem's precious children. And we don't have to beat around the bush. We can talk directly to Hashem. And I think this year, like last year, more than ever in a sense, when we may not have shul service, we may not have the assistance of a rabbi or a chazan or a choir or having our colleagues and our friends around us. It's just us.
Yeah.
Go up to the Eibishter, go up to the bride, if you like, and say, I want dessert. I want to have sweet year ahead. And you never know, the bride might storm right into the kitchen for you and get whatever you want. So
that's it.
So let's remember that story when you're sitting in your home this year, or whether you're sitting in your shul. Say, I'm going to talk to the one that can make it happen. So shul, sorry, we lost you for a minute. Yeah,
sorry about that. We've got the Women's Book Club on the other Zoom, so I just had to drop one and come back to the other, but I'm here. Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good point. You don't ask, you don't get. We always taught that. Not always do we get, the answer that we want from Hashem. or the answer that we think that we need and deserve. But definitely, if we don't ask, then what's the chance of getting? So it's all about asking. It's about putting our best foot forward. Exactly on that point, Daniel. I think I mentioned this in to the community before Rosh Hashanah on I think it was the pre Rosh Hashanah Zoom, to the exact point about talking to Hashem. I had just finished at the time reading a novel, a Baldacci novel, David Baldacci. It was an incredible book. And there was a line there that stuck out to me, and it's been stuck in my head ever since.
Yeah.
I can't remember the title of the story, so I'm not giving away the plot twist, but there were these two guys in a very emotional situation. If I'm not mistaken, they were standing at a graveside in a cemetery or something, and they were in tears. And one turned to the other and he said, "Talk to the Lord. Now's the time. Talk to the Lord." And the other guy turned around and he said, "I'd love to, but I don't remember my prayers." The guy looked at him. It was a very emotional moment. He looked at him. He said, "Then don't pray, just talk." And that kind of that is really exactly what you're saying. We kind of go, "Oh, can I pray? What should I say? Which tefillah? Which page?" And we get all caught up in the nuances of a particular tefillah. And we've got to remember, it's just about communicating. It's just about finding something that resonates with us. The page, like I always announce in shul, the page you're on is the right page, right? It's about connecting. It's about talking to Hashem. Even if it's not in the Hebrew, it's about pouring out your heart, asking it to fill on your terms, and really, like you said, creating that communication with our Creator, with us, with spirituality, with the infinite, with Hashem. And so it's a big part of it.
Isn't it amazing though? Because I think what you're saying resonates very strongly in that, when growing up and you always hear stories of great tzaddikim and great righteous people and amazing, things that they were able to achieve. And then it always boils down to like, who actually made a difference?
Yeah.
So you'll hear this great tzaddik who was able to pray and knew the whole of the Talmud backwards. But yet when he was sort of understanding who was able to avert the evil decree of that year, it was a Pashut Yid who just spoke to Hashem, who didn't even know how to pray, didn't even know what a siddur looked like. But it came from the heart. It came literally from a place of truth. I think that's the key. Talk truth. Be emes. Bring out the emes in yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it is. When you talk from a crushed heart, not necessarily in a bad place that you have to be crushed, but when you talk from a place of sincerity and sometimes even brokenness, where you feel like I just need to communicate to you, Hashem. I think that's how the gateways open. It's like, the border gates open. It's like, welcome, my son, come through.
Yeah. Like we say, there's nothing as precious as a broken heart, right? As Leonard Hakohen said, that's how the light gets in. It's something very powerful about brokenness, and not in a depressive way, but in a humble humility way. To turn to Hashem in tefillah. Let's see, what else do we have over as a theme?
So there's a big theme of the shofar blowing,
Yeah.
And the whole month of Elul, interestingly, as we lead into Rosh Hashanah, I think it's worth spending a moment on this. There's many different acronyms for the month of Elul. We know the famous one, which is on a lot of ketubot, Ani ledodi, v'dodi li, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me, signifying that powerful relationship that we have with Hashem. It's like our significant other, and
that's
certainly
right.
A very powerful and special relationship. But there's another one which says Aryeh. It's a pasuk from Tanakh, which says basically, if the word Aryeh, right, speaks about not necessarily about Elul, but you'll see in a moment how we will we'll see how Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Hoshana Rabbah, that whole experience.
Yeah.
Is Aryeh Shog Mi Lo Yireh. If a lion roars, who's not going to be frightened?
Yes.
So famous pasuk in Tanakh, and it says that refers to Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Hoshana Rabbah, and of course the Sukkot experience. And so the question is, what is it referring to? What do you mean? Aryeh Shog Mi Lo Yireh. If a lion roars, who's not going to be frightened? So I saw a really interesting idea, and that is what the pasuk is saying, that the whole high holiday experience is supposed to move you. It's supposed to make you feel that something has to change. You can't just come in the one end and leave the other end and be exactly the same person. But what's the connection between that and a lion? So I came up with an idea, which many years ago when I got married, we went on a safari. Sarah and I went on a safari, a part of our honeymoon. We went to Johannesburg and we went to the Kruger Park. For those of you from South Africa, you probably know it well. And I remember we didn't have much money then. We don't have much money now. But anyway, we rented a sort of like a rent-a-wreck to go to the Kruger National Park. And it's not a great car to take through the sand roads and so on. Today, if I went, I would probably try and rent a nice, luxurious four-wheel drive. But anyway, we drove this rent-a-wreck, and it got to a point we were driving, and we must have driven over a big branch, and it felt like something got cut or got stuck in the bottom of the car. And Sarah's like, go check what's underneath. I'm like, I'm not getting out of the car. Are you crazy? In the middle of the safari, and a lion could jump on us any moment. And of course, I have a very persistent wife, so there I was. I guess I was more scared of my wife than a lion. So I left the car, and for those, I think it took me about a minute to get the branches out. I was so scared. I was so nervous that an animal could jump out, a lion could jump at any moment. But if you take that same scenario, and I went with my children to the zoo, and I was at the lion's cage, I would walk around like I'm a macher, no problem, have a sandwich there. What's the difference, Shmuel? What's the difference between those two experiences?
Yeah.
The fence, the cage, the walls.
Yeah.
And so what the pasuk was telling us, the only way that you're going to have the lion impact you on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Elul, is if you lower the walls. You know, we put up walls throughout our lives, and some of them are important walls that help us, you know, not get impacted by negative people. We put up walls to keep our distance from others. But sometimes we also put up walls that don't allow us to be vulnerable, that don't allow us to have the right intimacy. And so when you think about the lion, think about what's going to make the biggest impact for me to feel a lion, to be cognizant of a lion around me, to feel Hashem's presence. I need to be ready to lower the walls, to be vulnerable, to talk, to talk to Hashem. So may the lion scare all of us in a positive sense by allowing us to feel comfortable to lower those boundaries and to allow the energy, the passion, the love to enter into our lives, into the people around us, and that we can have hopefully a very fruitful holiday ahead.
Yeah, very good. And we can segue into another abbreviation of of the month. We talk about Ani Ladodi, like you said, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. And then there's the very famous line from the Megillah, right? The book of Esther. It speaks about how the month the time of the year turned into sorrow to joy, and it says Ish lere'ehu umatanot le'evyonim. Right, and everybody turned to their fellow with gifts to the poor. There was an outpouring of love and an outpouring of kindness. And whilst it's perhaps not the first thing we think about when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and the Yomim Noraim, it actually plays a very big role. This idea of tzedakah, this idea of chesed, it's a large part of the holiday, about reaching out to each other in kindness, with love, and asking Hashem to reach out to us in tzedakah v'chesed. And obviously I'm referring to that beautiful song of Avinu Malkeinu, right? Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed. Do with us, be kind to us, be gracious to us. So a very big theme of this time of the year is to perhaps shine a spotlight on our interactions. While it's supposed to be an inward focused period of reflection, but it's also very much how we interact with others, as well. And obviously that fits very much into the context of how you began, and that in the way we're in, the type of world that we're living in right now is our engagement with other people and the way we treat others. Ultimately, if we want to be treated with tzedakah v'chesed, a large part of it, not necessarily tit for tat, but it's only fair. If we're asking for blessings from above, for righteousness and for mercy and for all those things, well then, ish lire'ehu umatanot le'evyonim. We've got to remember that Purim line. It stands for Elul, Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed.
I heard something interesting, but before I say that, I just want to make sure everybody's awake. I've always wanted to do a poll, so I'm going to ask for a live poll feed before we continue. When you have your apples dipped in honey, do you buy red apples or green apples? I want to see what the majority of people buy for Rosh Hashanah. So if you're happy to write in the chat, I just want to see a quick vote, and I might use this in a sermon one day. So I want to thank you all. If I do use, so we got green from the Chazan.
Chazan Greg uses green. I love it.
And Rivki uses red. All right, we'll see. We'll see who's going to win.
Josh, good.
We got red, green, red. Oh, it's very.
This was pre-planned. This was pre-planned.
Here we go. Okay, so we got red. It looks like red is the overwhelming. Do you think it's red, Shmuel?
Yes, it's definitely red. It's not so overwhelming, but it's definitely red.
Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate that. This will be scientific evidence that I can use going forward. A very professional study that was just conducted right here on Zoom. But sorry to.
we've got a good Jewish answer there. Whatever's on special.
I love that. Fantastic.
Very good, Noel.
And Leon, that's exactly. Keep it fresh, Leon. I like that. But just apropos what you were saying, and I don't mean to, because it was a very powerful thing that you were mentioning, but the whole concept of the way you judge others. I heard a beautiful shiur once, and of course I'm not going to go into the whole story, but the outline or the highlight of the shiur was that we're making judgments every day on others.
Yes.
And the truth is, when you look at some of the psukim in Tanakh, and it actually you're judging yourself. It's like the famous story of King David when he, when the prophet came to him and he was with Bathsheba and he sent her husband to the front line, and the Navi was saying to him, what if there was a rich person who took one person's poor sheep or poor lamb, and obviously he said the person should be killed, and he said you've just made a judgment on yourself. And some people say that story is really what happens every day. Every day that we're looking around the world, Hashem shows us certain situations which often are a reflection of our own actions. And so therefore be kind in your judgment, because you may be in fact making a ruling on yourself. So if anybody ever wanted to be a judge in the high court, I've just actually told you that you have a very powerful role, because you are making judgments on yourself every single day.
Yeah.
But if I can just, I know that I don't want to hog the mic, as they say, but when I'm speaking about walls, one of the walls that we do put up is the walls of excuses. People make excuses, and they might be coming from a place of fear. They might be coming from a place of laziness. It could be a place of that it's very well justified. There might be something that's happened in your life where people have pushed you down and people have insulted you and people made you feel lonely, and so you've got an excuse. And so as we lead into the Yomim Noraim, I think it's a time to reflect on excuses. And I heard a cute joke, if I may. I don't know how well it's going to come off on social media.
Come on, what's a rabbi without a joke? Come on.
But just very quickly, I'll tell it to you. And I'm asking if it's a good joke, I might repeat it again in shul and just pretend you didn't hear it. But there was a joke. There was an American guy who moved to Israel, and he was a secular Jew, and everyone was encouraging him, look, learn Hebrew. You're now in Israel. And he refused. I'm not learning Hebrew. And they said, why don't you want to learn Hebrew? He said, if I learn Hebrew, then everybody's going to pressurize me to start studying in Hebrew. And then I'm going to get rabbis coming to me and saying, now that you know how to read Hebrew, start reading the prayer book. And if I know how to read the prayer book, they're going to make me come to Torah classes. I'm not interested. If I say I don't know how to read Hebrew, no one's going to bother me. I have an excuse. I don't know how to read Hebrew. I'm fine. Anyway, this goes on for years, and people keep telling him to read Hebrew. And he says, no. People tell him to get closer to Hashem. I don't know how to read Hebrew. I'm not doing it. And anyway, at 120, he goes to the next world. And he comes to the day of truth and judgment, and they say to him, look, we want to send you to the bad place, but you have anything you can justify? He says, I've got an excuse. I didn't read Hebrew. They say, you know what? Good excuse. You're going to go to heaven. Anyway, he goes to heaven, but what's the problem in heaven? All they're doing there is learning and studying. Yeah. So he's bored, and he's thinking around, look, it's nice, the weather's nice. But anyway, after a few days, he's really bored because they're all just studying Torah. And he goes to the archangel and he says, Angel, Malach, can I go to the other side for a bit? I want to just see what it's like. And the angel says, look, I'll send you to you. He says, but look, can I come back here? And he says, yeah, you can come back here. I'm going to give you a passport. He gives him a passport, writes out a few things. He says, just hand it to the other angel on the other side when you want to come back. Anyway, he says, are you sure this is a re-entry permit? He says, yeah, I'm guaranteeing it's a re-entry permit. Anyway, he goes to Gehenna, to hell, in inverted commas, and he sees it's a bit more fun, but after a few days, it's boiling hot. It's starting to really cook, and he says, this is uncomfortable. Whilst the other place is boring, at least it's comfortable. I can sit down and relax. This place is hot. Anyway, he goes up to the gate, and there's the archangel standing there, the devil, if you like, and he says, I want to go back in. And he says, no one ever goes back in. He says, what are you talking about? Look, here's my paper. And the angel looks and he says, look, unfortunately, it's written in Hebrew. I don't know how to read Hebrew. Sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah.
And of course, we can understand the nimshal. You're going to make excuses all your life. One day it'll come back to bite you. So you got to put excuses away.
Yeah. Let's talk apples. You did a poll. Let's talk apples.
All right, go for it.
Let's see. It's a very obviously one of the most famous traditions.
Just 1 second, Shmuel. We had Deborah
on
Facebook commented pink ladies. We forgot about pink ladies.
Pink ladies, okay.
But those are red, aren't they not? A little bit, I think.
Yeah.
They would fall into the
between
red.
the red and the green. Pink ladies, good choice. Whatever you use, so long as it's sweet, really. If you can get a sweet apple, that's what it's all about. We know there's a very strong emphasis on sweetness on Rosh Hashanah. And I think that's why there's probably a million different interpretations that we all know. Maybe not a million, but quite a few of why we have apple and why we dip it into honey. And this is on the first night of Rosh Hashanah, right? Just after we've, the beginning of the meal. And we take the apple and we dip it into the honey and we make this beautiful bracha, Shetechadesh Aleinu Shana Tova Umetuka. It's a beautiful prayer. And we wish each other not only a good year, not a happy new year, but a good and sweet year. And we really wish sweetness upon each other and on our year. And I remember seeing an interesting interpretation coming to mind, the difference between apple and honey, why we actually dip the apple into the honey. Honey is sweet. Apple is also sweet. What are we doing? So if I remember correctly, the apple, yes, represents sweetness. It's a fruit on the tree. It's always sweet. There's no surprises there. You get what you get. You get a sweet apple and you enjoy it. There's no surprises that it's sweet. That's what apples are. But honey, as sweet as it is, if we take a moment to think about where it comes from, then things change a little bit. Yes, it's incredibly sweet, but it comes from a sting, so to speak. It comes from a being that is able to sting as well. And that's a completely different type of sweetness. So when we wish somebody a good year, we're wishing them almost like an apple. Everything should be good. It should be smooth sailing. It should be revealed good. But we're also wishing each other that it should be sweet like honey, because life is not just as sweet as an apple and things are smooth sailing. Life is very much has a sting to it sometimes, and things don't always go doesn't go to plan, and things fail, and relationships break, and work doesn't work out, and we don't reach our goals. There's Corona. There's all these things that are the stings in life. But ultimately, if we're able to pull through, if we're able to gather ourselves and take the next step forward, we're able to grow from our experience and open new horizons. That sweetness is so much more sweet. So we wish each other it should be as sweet as an apple, Shana Tova, but also Umutuka. If there are going to be any stings this year, let the end of that be sweetness as sweet as honey. So it's quite deep. It's not just dip the apple in the honey and sing that beautiful song. It really represents the depth and meaning of what we want for ourselves and what we want from others. It's almost like it's giving us a little bit of a kick and say, yeah, things might sting, but let there be some sweetness at the end.
Amazing. And maybe even taking that one step further, and that is that, and I know this is hard, and look, I don't know if I could always keep to this particular high level of living in terms of living in such a high focused and positive outlook, but that sometimes even the sting from Hashem's perspective is good for you. We see it as a sting, but Hashem, who is our father, our mother, who is our parent, who loves us like an only child, yes, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that the sting doesn't hurt, but from Hashem's perspective. One of the other ideas about an apple and honey that I like, and it's not really, I don't think this is very Kabbalistic per se, but, Pesach, we focus so much on the kids. It's all about, getting the children to ask questions and to pique their curiosity. But I think for me, one of the ideas of the apple and honey on Rosh Hashanah, I find, and I think this year more than ever, as it was last year perhaps, that, sometimes Judaism, you lose out on the excitement. You forget that it can actually be fun. You think that in order for it to be Judaism, it has to be serious, it has to be somber, have to walk around, lowly. I can't just, have fun and have a good time.
The oy vey of Judaism, right?
I know that an apple and honey is not the most fun thing, but, it is an exciting thing. For kids, I love it. Every year, when you see the children like get stuck into the apple and honey, and the honey goes everywhere. And one of the things we do is certainly at an option, one of the customs, we try and get the child to lick honey. Why do we get them to lick honey? Because we want them to feel that Judaism is enjoyable. It's sweet. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be, as I said, always serious. Have fun with your Yiddishkeit. Enjoy it. We certainly do, I think. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. And I think that's a really important factor as we go into Rosh Hashanah this year. And ask yourself, is Judaism, am I enjoying it? And if the answer is no, don't leave it, don't abandon it. Say, well, maybe I need to find a teacher who can help me understand it in a more pleasant way, a more enjoyable way. Maybe I need to connect with particular minhagim, customs, or parts of the faith that I haven't yet tapped into. But don't just go through it with it being, not meaningful or not enjoyable and so on. So I think those are important points to ponder as you go through the journey of this coming year.
Yeah. And it's a very good point, because that's the real challenge of, I mentioned before about harnessing the energy each year, but I guess the downside of doing the same thing every year and the same Pesach and the same Rosh Hashanah and even the same Shabbat and the same prayers every day is that things do become rote, and they do become, I'll just say this word and I'll say that word. And it's about finding ways to make this year relevant to this year and to indeed harness the energy, but to, like you say, keep it fresh, although it's quite repetitive, but to put a new spin on it, fitting for 2021 or 5782 as it's going to be. But the other thing, you mentioned Pesach and excitement. Judaism is very much about action, right? So all those things that we speak about at the Seder, this sensory experience, right? We look at the matzah and we touch and we smell and we taste. It's the same thing on Rosh Hashanah, if you think about it. We can talk about sweetness and we can wish each other a good year. But no, there we are sitting at the table, cutting up an apple and dipping it into the honey. It's not a superstition, eating pomegranates and dates. People think they're superstitions, wishful thinking for a new year. But if you think about it from the perspective of that, we're taking what our wishes that are, embedded in our heart and in our minds, but we want to actually bring them out into the real world. Then here we go. We're actually making something sweet, and we're counting all our blessings and our mitzvahs in the pomegranate, and we're eating meron and simus because we want a fruitful and a productive year. We're literally acting the way we want the year to be, and there's no greater way to make something happen than to actually put your right foot forward and make it happen. Act on it.
That's brilliant, because you're right. Because so often it's just the intellectual growth or the spiritual feeling. I feel so good. It's making me feel so passionate. But you got to make it tachlis, you got to, as you said, it's got to be sensory. It's got to be, how do I make this real? How do I hold it in my hands? As people, we like to hold things in our hands, we want to feel, we want to touch, we want to be there. And that's why I think COVID's been so hard, because this engagement is so, it's so not personal, it's great. I mean, I thank Hashem that at least we can meet in such a way. Imagine this, God forbid, happened 20, 30 years ago when you didn't have the capacity to do that, We'll just be on our Nokias. So I'm not being ungrateful, don't get me wrong, but as you said, we want to make it real. There's one other concept I wanted to just touch on. We can touch on a few more, but there's an interesting verse in Tehillim which says about Hashem, Ki imcha haslicha leman tivarei, and we say it through slichas as well. It says, because with you Hashem is forgiveness, therefore you are feared.
Right.
Very interesting question, that you can ask on this verse. God, you are the person, you are the being that forgives, and therefore we fear you. And a lot of commentators ask the question and say that seems to be counterintuitive. The fact that God forgives should not be the reason that God is feared. It should be the reason that he's not feared. So why would King David put these two in the same verse? Either we say, God, because you forgive, therefore we don't fear you, because we know you're going to forgive us. Or we should say, God, because you don't forgive, therefore we fear you. And there's a really, really beautiful answer that explains that. And I'll just give it by way of an analogy for myself. There's two levels of fear in Judaism. There's what we call yira ila'a, high level of fear, and yira tata, a lower level of fear. And what are the difference between these two? A lower level of fear, let's start with that one, is where you're scared. I'm scared of punishment. both Shmuel and I serve as police chaplains. Shmuel's been doing a lot longer than I have, but a lot of people, we don't want to do anything wrong because the police will fine us, and maybe it's not the best thing to talk about right now. But I'm scared. I'm scared of punishment. I'm scared I can get a fine. I'm scared I can get in trouble. But then there's a much more profound fear. It's not I'm scared because I'm getting in trouble. It's not scared. I'm not scared because I'm going to get punished. I'm not going to do this because I respect you so much. I don't know if there's anyone in your life where you would never, ever think to do something wrong in front of that person, not because you're scared they're going to punish you, but because you have such an awe for that being, that person. It could be a parent. And as I was saying, in my context, there was a particular teacher when I was growing up who, in the beginning of my relationship with that teacher, I didn't like them. I was scared of them. I didn't respect them. And over the years of high school, I got to a point where I really started to admire this person. We went on a week Shabbaton with him, and I got to see a whole different side where I truly started to admire him and to really respect him. And therefore, it wasn't that I was scared when he was around. I didn't want to be seen in his presence to be doing something wrong. And so what the verse in King David is telling us is that Hashem loves each and every one of us. Hashem sees the good in each and every one of us. He cares for each and every one of us. And so when Hashem is going to come to your judgment, Hashem's going to be forgiving. Why? Because Hashem understands us. Hashem says, look, I know it's tough being a Yid. It's tough being a human. There's so much going on. I have empathy for you. And when we say, oh, Hashem, you have empathy for us, you care about us, you understand what we're going through, now we fear you. Now someone who can be so generous, so concerned, so caring for us, and is such a forgiving God, therefore we fear you, therefore we respect you. Because someone, it's like, and again, just to use the analogy further, what shows the power of a police officer? When a police officer pulls you over and gives you a ticket, okay, do you have respect for the police officer? Does it show that he's really or she's really powerful? Okay, they're doing the job. But when a police officer lets you off the fine and says, you know what, this time around, I'm going to let you off. You know why? Because I believe that you can do better next time. You drive away thinking, you know what, that's power. Because the police officer really was compassionate. And I'm not saying the police officer should let anyone off fines, but that stands out much more. Because why? Because you saw that person has the ability to forgive, and Hashem has the ability to forgive. And I think going into this year, remember that even if you feel you've done wrong, even if you feel that you can't change, remember, because Hashem is forgiving, we can respect the Eibishter.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think, we have to remember that it's not an ordinary time of the year. It's not an ordinary day, Rosh Hashanah. It's a day it's actually filled with potential. It's a day that's unlike any other. The energy is at an all-time high. The opportunity is an all-time high. There's an incredible amount of potential. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of the words Hayom Harat Olam, right? Yeah. We sing that song when we blow the shofar, Hayom Harat Olam. Yeah, beautiful song. Harat literally means, well, it means there's a number of things, but Hayom Harat Olam, today the world is trembling, right? Rosh Hashanah, everything's hanging in the balance. Sounds like an awesome experience. But Harat Olam also means that the world is pregnant. That means we're pregnant with opportunity on this day. It's Rosh Hashanah. It's the head of the year. It's the start. It's a new beginning, and therefore full of potential. So we really, really, all of us really have to just make the most of it. It can be a bit overwhelming to think, where do I start? But to find an area where we can focus on in our relationship with God and our relationship with others, and really make the most of this opportunity, whether we're in shul or whether we're home, and find the pros that outweigh the cons, and really take it, harness the energy as we began it with.
Absolutely. And I think as we're getting to the close of this evening session, at least, to remind everybody that next week, Monday night, we'll continue our discussion and focus on a few more of the Yom Kippur themes as opposed to Rosh Hashanah. But I think what you said in the last words that you mentioned, we're all praying that we're not going to have to be at home again. We're all praying that we can be, at shul, or to do the things we want to do. But I think let's just put that preparation, if you like, that we might be in at home. And I think one of the things I would like to suggest that everybody tries to do, if you can, and I know this, everybody's got different circumstances, everybody's got a different reality, but there's mitzvahs which are done in the home, and they happen whether it's a COVID year or not a COVID year. We mentioned the apple dipped in honey. We mentioned new fruit. We've got the challah that we eat at home. We have greetings. Now, look, not everybody lives with somebody else. Some people live on their own, so it might not be as easy as this particular one. But there are a number of mitzvahs that are done at the home. And I think this year,
Daniel, you can actually wish yourself this prayer if you're alone.
That's right. You can wish yourself this prayer. And if you're able to go out and listen to the shofar, if it's going to have to be coming around the block, if you've got a streaming around you, there's many things that we do every year that don't require community. They require yourself. So what I would suggest this year is to take those home mitzvot and really understand them, learn about them. Because you know why? Because it is the home experience. Don't try and recreate everything else necessarily, but do the home stuff in a powerful way. When you go on within your 5-kilometer walk to do tashlich, to go to the stream, and we didn't have a chance to talk too much about that, or at all about it. We can talk about it next week. We can tie it into Yom Kippur. Correct. Or when you're hearing the shofar, which may come to your doorstep, or when you're having the meal, or as if you do have other people in your home where you can greet them, focus on the greeting. Or as you said, if you're at home by yourself, you can wish yourself the greeting. Yep. So I think make the experiences of the home the power of this year. And of course, like I think Shmuel mentioned earlier, that talking to Hashem, you might have a machzor, you might not have a machzor. And if you have a machzor, you might want to read some of the prayers at home. But then just find a place in your house, quiet spot, and talk from the heart. Tell Hashem what you're upset with, tell him what you're happy with, and make some resolutions, make some tough calls on what needs to change, what needs to be different. And I think as we've been discussing, that's what really makes, I think, the experience meaningful, is when you don't look the same when you started than when it ends. And I don't mean because you put on so much weight from eating all the food. I mean that you've developed emotionally, spiritually, intellectually to being a different person than you were when you started. Beautiful.
Ultimately, we want it to be a zachreinu l'chaim, which should be remembered for good life and a healthy life for us all.
Amen. So look, I don't see too many questions, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Although what we might do is we might end the live stream, Shmuel, and then we can unmute people if people want to talk.
Sure. Thank you to all those who joined on Facebook. See you again next week.
Yeah, and follow if you're part of Elwood Shul and you want to look what else they're doing, you can find them on their Facebook page or their website.
Absolutely.
And for South Cork, we've also got quite a few events coming up. So just stay in touch, and we'd look forward to seeing you next Monday night at 8. But we'll end the live stream. So thank you to everyone who watched on Facebook and who will watch this later on YouTube. We're now going to unmute everyone that they can ask questions in person.